I woke up in the hospital with blinding pain shooting through my body. The fluorescent lights burned my eyes as I tried to focus on the nurse checking my vitals. I asked when my parents would arrive. Her awkward pause told me everything before she even spoke. They had chosen to attend my brother Derek's award ceremony instead. 3 broken ribs, a shattered leg, and a concussion weren't enough to pull them away from their golden child's moment. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like the second choice in your family. Trust me, this story gets worse. Growing up in suburban Boston, I always knew where I stood in our family hierarchy. My father, James, built his reputation as one of the city's most aggressive corporate attorneys, while my mother, Diana, ran a successful psychology practice catering to wealthy clients. Our sprawling colonial house, with its perfectly manicured lawn and swimming pool, projected exactly the image they wanted: success, achievement, and status. From the beginning, my brother Derek and I occupied very different positions in our family. Though he was 3 years younger, he quickly became the star around which our family orbited. Derek was naturally athletic, academically gifted, and possessed the same driving ambition that my parents valued above all else. I was different. More reserved, creative, drawn to art and writing rather than sports and competition. My parents viewed these interests with barely concealed disappointment. Hobbies are fine, Fidel, my father would say, but they don't build a future. By high school, the pattern was firmly established. When Derek made varsity football as a freshman, my parents threw a massive party inviting all their friends and colleagues. When my artwork was selected for a citywide exhibition that same year, my mother simply said, "That's nice, honey," before immediately changing the subject to Derek's upcoming game. Graduation day crystallized everything. My parents hosted an extravagant party for Derek when he graduated as valedictorian. For my graduation 3 years earlier, where I finished in the top 10%, but not at the very top, they took me to dinner at a chain restaurant and spent most of the meal discussing a case my father was working on. College offered escape. I chose Northwestern in Chicago partly for their excellent advertising program, but mostly for the distance it put between me and my family. Those 4 years gave me room to breathe, to discover who I was outside my brother's shadow. I joined the school newspaper, found friends who appreciated my creativity, and began building confidence in my abilities. After graduation, I landed a position at a mid-size advertising agency in downtown Chicago. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but I was determined to make it work. Unlike Derek, who accepted substantial financial help from our parents for his Ivy League education and Manhattan apartment, I was determined to stand on my own. I lived frugally, sharing an apartment with 2 roommates, bringing lunch to work, and putting aside as much of each paycheck as possible. While Derek posted Instagram photos from exclusive clubs and expensive vacations, I quietly built my savings account and focused on climbing the career ladder. By 28, my efforts had paid off. I was promoted to senior creative director, nearly doubling my salary. I purchased a modest but stylish 1-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, paid for entirely with my own savings. When I called my parents to share the news, my mother listened politely before quickly steering the conversation to Derek's new position at a prestigious financial firm. "He will be managing portfolios for some very important clients," she gushed. "The youngest person ever to hold such a position at the company." I maintained contact with my family through obligatory holiday visits and monthly phone calls, but each interaction reinforced the distance between us. My parents rarely asked about my work or life in Chicago. When I invited them to visit my new apartment, there was always some reason they couldn't make it: busy, schedules, professional commitments, or most often events involving Derek. Meanwhile, Derek's career trajectory continued its meteoric rise. After graduating from Princeton, he secured a position at a boutique investment firm in New York. Within 3 years, he was promoted twice and moved into a luxury condo in Tribeca. Our parents constantly marveled at his success, frequently flying to New York for weekends to see him. "Your brother just understands how the world works," my father told me during one holiday visit. "He knows how to make the right moves, connect with the right people." What none of us acknowledged were the early warning signs that Derek's success might not be built on solid ground. Casual comments about working around regulations or creative accounting. The flashy lifestyle that seemed excessive even for his substantial salary. The occasional jokes about clients who would never notice certain transaction fees. I tried to maintain my relationship with my parents despite the clear favoritism. I sent thoughtful birthday and Christmas gifts. I called regularly to check in. I made the effort to visit them in Boston at least twice a year, though these visits often left me feeling emotionally drained. Each time I extended an invitation for them to visit Chicago, I received the same response. We would love to, but things are just so busy right now. Maybe next month. Next month never came. The night of the accident started normally enough. I was driving home from a client dinner around 10 p.m., pleased with how the presentation had gone. Light snow had begun falling earlier that evening, and the temperature hovered just below freezing, creating slick conditions on the roads. I remember checking my mirrors as I approached an intersection near my apartment. The light was green, and I was proceeding through when I saw headlights approaching much too fast from the right. A pickup truck had hit a patch of ice and was sliding directly toward me. The impact came with a deafening crash of metal and breaking glass. My car spun violently, airbags exploding in my face with stunning force. When everything finally stopped moving, I was upside down, suspended by my seatbelt with pain radiating through my chest and leg. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was the taste of blood and the sound of distant sirens. I woke up in the ambulance, disoriented and terrified. The paramedic leaning over me explained I had been in a serious accident, and they were taking me to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Through waves of pain, I managed to give them my emergency contact information for my parents. At the hospital, doctors determined I had 3 broken ribs, a complex fracture in my right leg requiring surgery, and a moderate concussion. After being stabilized and moved to a room, I asked a nurse to help me call my parents. It was nearly midnight in Boston, but my mother answered on the 3rd ring. "Mom," I said, my voice raspy from the breathing tube they had inserted earlier. "I was in a car accident. I am at Northwestern Memorial." Her initial reaction seemed appropriately concerned. She asked about my condition, what the doctors had said, whether I needed anything. Then came the hesitation. "We will try to get there as soon as possible, but—" She paused. "Derek is receiving an important industry award this weekend. The ceremony is Saturday night in New York." Even through the fog of pain medication, I felt the familiar sting of disappointment. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "Not really. Let me talk to your father and call you back in the morning," she promised. The next day passed in a blur of doctor's tests and increasing pain as the initial shock wore off. My surgery was scheduled for the following morning. I waited for my parents to call, but my phone remained silent except for messages from concerned friends and coworkers. It was a nurse who finally delivered the news, her expression uncomfortable as she entered my room that evening. "Your emergency contact called the nurses' station," she said gently. "Your parents wanted me to tell you they won't be able to make it this weekend. They said they will try to visit next week after your brother's award ceremony." The physical pain of my injuries paled in comparison to the emotional wound that reopened in that moment. Even a serious accident wasn't enough to make me a priority. Later that night, I listened to a voicemail from my mother explaining that Derek's award was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and they couldn't possibly miss it. They would come as soon as things settled down. The surgery went well, but recovery was difficult. My friend Jake, who I had known since college, stepped up in ways I never expected. He took time off work to help me navigate the hospital discharge process, set up my apartment for my limited mobility, and stayed with me those first critical days when I couldn't manage alone. My coworkers organized a meal delivery schedule, ensuring I had food when Jake couldn't be there. My boss called personally to assure me my job was secure and to take all the time I needed for recovery. These acts of kindness from people who had no obligation to care for me stood in stark contrast to my parents' absence. When they finally did visit nearly 2 weeks after the accident, the encounter was awkward and tense. They stayed at a hotel, rather than in my guest room, spent only 1 full day with me, and filled most of that time talking about Derek's award ceremony and the important connections he had made there. The firm's CEO personally congratulated him, my father said proudly. Said he's never seen someone with such natural financial instincts. My mother nodded enthusiastically. Everyone was so impressed. The speech he gave was just perfect. Neither of them seemed to notice how much I was still struggling to move around my apartment or how much pain was evident on my face. When they left the next morning, my mother hugged me gently and said, "We would stay longer, but your father has an important case, and I have patients who have been rescheduled twice already." Their brief, perfunctory visit made one thing crystal clear: I needed to stop expecting them to be the parents I needed. The realization was painful but ultimately liberating. I could not change them, but I could change how much power their behavior had over me. During my recovery, I began seeing a therapist to process not just the trauma of the accident, but the deeper family dynamics it had exposed. Doctor. Katz helped me understand that my parents' emotional limitations weren't a reflection of my worth. Their inability to prioritize me was about their flaws, not mine. As my physical injuries healed, I focused on building deeper connections with the people who had shown up for me when it mattered. Jake and I began spending more time together, our friendship evolving into something more like family. My coworkers were no longer just colleagues, but friends who had seen me at my most vulnerable and stood by me. These relationships, chosen and authentic, became the foundation of my new support system. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to be valued simply for who I was, without conditions or comparisons. In the year following the accident, I gradually rebuilt my life. Physical therapy sessions 3 times a week eventually restored most of my mobility, though cold weather still brought aching pain to my healed fractures. I returned to work after 8 weeks, initially part-time and then full-time once I could navigate the office independently. My career continued its upward trajectory. The campaign I had been working on before the accident launched to enthusiastic client approval, and I was assigned larger, more prestigious accounts. 6 months after returning to work, I received a substantial promotion to executive creative director, overseeing a team of 12 people. With the increased salary came the opportunity to upgrade my living situation. I sold my one-bedroom apartment and purchased a spacious 2-bedroom condo with a stunning view of Lake Michigan. Every piece of furniture, every decor choice represented my taste and my achievement. Nothing had been given to me. Everything had been earned through my own efforts. My relationship with my parents grew increasingly distant. I stopped calling weekly, instead checking in once a month or less. I skipped the traditional Thanksgiving visit, choosing instead to host a Friendsgiving with Jake and other close friends in Chicago. Christmas was spent with Jake's family, who welcomed me warmly and without the constant comparison I had grown up with. For the first time in my life, I felt genuinely at peace. I had stopped seeking approval I would never receive, and instead focused on the relationships and work that brought me fulfillment. Then came the call that upended everything. It was nearly midnight on a Tuesday when my phone rang, my mother's name lighting up the screen. Immediately, I felt a sense of dread. We never spoke this late. Fidel. Her voice sounded strained, almost unrecognizable. Are you awake? We need to talk. What is wrong? I asked, sitting up in bed. It is Derek, she said, and I heard a muffled sob. He is in trouble. Serious trouble. Over the next 20 minutes, she explained the situation in halting, disjointed sentences. Derek was under investigation for financial fraud at his firm. According to my mother, there had been misunderstandings about how client funds were being managed. Large sums of money had been temporarily moved between accounts without proper authorization. They are saying such terrible things, she said, using words like misappropriation and fraud. Your brother was just being creative with investments. He was going to put everything back once the returns came in. As the story unfolded, the reality became clear. Derek had been gambling with client money, making unauthorized high-risk investments and skimming funds for his own use. When some investments failed, he couldn't cover the losses. A client had noticed discrepancies in their statements and launched an investigation that quickly uncovered the extent of his actions. He could face criminal charges, my mother said, her voice breaking. Your father is talking to attorneys, but they are saying he needs specialized representation. The retainer alone is $100,000, and there might be restitution required to keep this out of court. I listened, silently processing the information. Then came the real purpose of the call. We need your help, Fidel, she said. We know you have been saving. You always were so good with money. We need to borrow $175,000 to help your brother, just until we can liquidate some investments and property. The request left me speechless. After years of favoritism, after choosing Derek's award ceremony over being with me in the hospital, they were now asking me to hand over my savings to bail him out of consequences he had earned through his own unethical choices. You want me to give you nearly all of my savings? I finally asked. Money I have been setting aside for years. For what exactly? To save Derek from facing responsibility for stealing. Do not be dramatic. My mother snapped her vulnerability, instantly replaced with the dismissive tone I knew so well. He made some mistakes, yes, but he is your brother. Family helps family. Where was that family help when I was in the hospital after nearly dying in a car crash? The words escaped before I could stop them, years of hurt finally finding voice. That was different, she said. You were fine. The doctors said you were stable. This is real trouble. Derek could go to prison. My father got on the phone then, his voice tight with anger. Listen to me, Fidel. This is not the time for your jealousy and resentment. Your brother needs help, and we expect you to step up. This is what family does. Something broke inside me then, but not in the way they expected. Instead of crumbling under the weight of their expectations and manipulations, I felt a strange clarity. No, I said simply. What did you say? My father demanded. I said no. I will not give you my savings to bail out Derek. He made his choices. He can face the consequences. What followed was a barrage of emotional manipulation. My mother cried. My father threatened. They reminded me of all they had done for me over the years, conveniently forgetting the many times they had chosen Derek over me. They insisted I was being selfish, vindictive, petty. If you do not help your brother now, do not consider yourself part of this family anymore, my father finally said. I stopped feeling like part of this family a long time ago, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. When you chose Derek's award ceremony over being with me in the hospital, you made your priorities clear. I have accepted that. Now you need to accept my decision. I ended the call and sat in the darkness of my bedroom, heart pounding but mind strangely calm. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to them, had refused to accept the role they had always assigned me. The relief was so profound it felt almost like physical pain. The fallout from my refusal was swift and fierce. My phone filled with angry texts and voicemails from both parents. My father called me ungrateful and selfish. My mother vacillated between tearful pleas and cold accusations of betrayal. Neither acknowledged the years of favoritism or their absence during my time of need. 3 days after the initial call, Derek himself reached out. His approach was different, calibrated to manipulate in ways unique to our relationship. I know things have not always been fair between us, he said, his voice carrying the charming sincerity that had always worked so well with our parents. I should have been a better brother, especially after your accident. I see that now. But please, Fidel, I am desperate. I made mistakes, bad ones, but I do not deserve to have my life ruined over this. When I remained firm in my refusal, his tone changed dramatically. You have always been jealous of me, he hissed. This is your chance to feel superior. Is not it? Watching me fall while you play the righteous one. The attacks expanded beyond my immediate family. Aunts, uncles, and cousins began calling most, taking my parents' side without knowing the full story. Only my cousin Thomas, who had experienced similar treatment from the extended family, reached out in support. You did the right thing, he told me during a long phone conversation. They have been doing this your whole life, making you feel like your needs do not matter. Stand your ground. Thomas's support meant more than he could know. It was confirmation that I was not crazy, that what I had experienced was real and valid. We began talking regularly, rebuilding a connection that had been discouraged by our parents years earlier. I returned to therapy, needing help processing the conflict and standing firm in my decision. Dr. Katz helped me recognize the deeply ingrained patterns of family dynamics and the courage it took to break them. What you are experiencing is the extinction burst, she explained. When a behavior that has always worked suddenly stops working, people often escalate dramatically before they accept the new reality. Your parents and brother have always been able to manipulate you through guilt and obligation. Your refusal threatens their entire understanding of your relationship. Through therapy, I connected with a support group for adult children of emotionally neglectful parents. Hearing others' stories that mirrored my own experiences provided additional validation and strength. Meanwhile, Derek's legal troubles played out publicly. Local business publications ran stories about the investigation. Eventually, he accepted a plea deal that included financial penalties and a 5-year ban from working in the financial industry, but avoided jail time. My parents liquidated a significant portion of their retirement accounts to pay for his legal defense and restitution. Their social standing in Boston took a substantial hit. Friends and colleagues who had listened to years of boasting about Derek's brilliance and success now witnessed his disgrace. The family narrative of exceptional achievement collapsed under the weight of reality. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries. When my parents' communications moved from aggressive to conciliatory, suggesting we put this unfortunate situation behind us, I responded with clear terms for any future relationship, to acknowledgement of past patterns, genuine apology for their absence after my accident, and respect for my autonomy going forward. Those terms remained unmet, and so distance remained my protection. Instead of pouring energy into changing people who did not want to change, I focused on building the life I wanted. My career continued to flourish. The agency assigned me to lead our newest and most innovative campaigns. My team respected me, and my creative vision was valued. I found tremendous satisfaction in mentoring younger creatives, especially those who, like me, approached problems from unconventional angles. I began volunteering at a community arts program for teenagers, particularly those struggling to find their place. Working with young people who felt overlooked or undervalued by their families gave purpose to my own painful experiences. I could offer them what I had needed at their age: recognition of their unique gifts and validation of their worth. Jake remained my closest friend, his unwavering support during my recovery, evolving into a bond that defied simple categorization. We were more than friends, but defined our relationship on our own terms, free from conventional expectations. Slowly, I built a life rich with meaning and authentic connection. The hole left by my family's conditional love, filled with relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care. I learned that family could be chosen, created through shared values and reciprocal support rather than mere biology. The most profound change, however, was internal. I no longer measured my worth through my parents' approval or in comparison to Derek. I recognized my own strengths, appreciated my creativity and empathy as valuable traits rather than weaknesses, and set boundaries that protected my hard-won self-respect. Standing up to my parents that night became the catalyst for my true healing. By refusing to sacrifice my financial security to shield my brother from consequences, I was really refusing to continue playing the role assigned to me since childhood. I was declaring my right to be treated with basic respect and consideration. What is your relationship with your family like? Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength after family betrayal. Remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to say no to those who have not learned to value you. Thank you for listening, and I wish you courage on your own journey towards self-worth and healthy relationships.